So I've been coaching this student who's working on their lights and shadows. And you might be thinking, what's wrong with their lights and shadows? They've got a great drawing from life going on in here. Well, I'm going to introduce some things that's going to both make the drawing process simpler and also make the drawing more powerful. So the first thing we want to do is take a look at the reference and get a sense of the light shining on this horse. And I'm looking at where the light is coming from as it's landing on the horse. I'm also looking for cast shadows. So generally it seems to me that the light is shining directly above. We can also understand that the light is pretty warm. We're seeing these creamy colors in here, and that's an indication for us because these areas over here seem to be really quite bright, but they're that same kind of greenish gray blue shadow color. This is where the lights actually are. Using that information, we come over to the drawing, and immediately what I'm seeing are areas that are very bright, like in here, that are actually not being touched by the primary light source. If I simply take a shadow value, let's say something like this, and I begin to cover over everything that is not being touched by the light. This is the primary light source. That means that all of this area is going to get covered up. I'm going to cover over all of this, and you can see that I'm losing information as I am identifying what the shadows are. And again, the shadows are not necessarily what's dark or what's bright. The shadows are actually whatever the light is not touching. Very easy to get lost in the details when you're looking really close at something, and you get in real close in here, you don't think of this as a whole swath of shadow. So it's very important that we're looking at the reference from a distance. All of this in here is shadow. There's also the shape of the leg that's in the back, and actually this whole pedestal is made out of the same material, so it's going to be okay to give it the same value. Some of the proportions are a little bit off, and I'm not really concerned about that for this video. So comparing this to the original drawing, hopefully you can see that there's a strength that's added in here with these changes, with this simplifying, making all of the shadows into a single color. That should really tell you something about the nature of shadows and of lights. And from here, it doesn't take much to, just add in a few subtleties, a little bit of a hint of something more going on inside of those shadows. Maybe there's some reflections that are in there and are helping to, explain some of the form, some reflections off of things, and maybe there's just more to do here. But as we're searching for what is the thing that gives a quick, powerful overall impression and structure, you find it in simplifying the light and the shadow. So what can we learn from this? How do we apply this into our drawings and paintings? Well, first, you saw me separate the light from the shadow. It's one of the first things that God did in Genesis. He separated the light from the darkness. We need to identify what our light source is, and then how it's shining on the object, what the light is touching and what it's not touching. And that's how I got this structure. But then it follows that the things that are being touched by the light are going to be brighter, so make sure that all of your shadows are darker, which leads us further into this idea that light is visual information. It's how we see. Light enters our eyes and it allows us to see the world. So a lack of light equals a lack of information. So in the shadows, have less details, have less contrast, less variance from the darks to your brights. There's less texture. You can see, even though this is a digital painting on top of a charcoal drawing, you can see there's a lot of texture in the light, and that's great. And then the texture in here, it's neither adding nor taking away from that. It's just shadows, right? And then finally, there's less color, which obviously doesn't apply here, but there's going to be less color because color travels from light waves, so you have less color there. So all that to say, simplify your painting and start by simplifying your shadows. Look to the light. Think about how much time and attention you could be spending on the lights in your work instead of being drained in the shadows. So don't dwell in the darkness. Focus on the light and you will have an awesome, awesome painting. And in sharing all these things, it was really cool to see the light bulb go off for my student. The very next drawing that they sent me, this was after our conversation about simplifying the shadows. And you can see, look at how simple the shadows are in here, in this drawing. compared to what we have before. There's a structure, there's a strength to this drawing that's been seriously leveled up, and all of the information can be found in the light, and there's very little information, just suggestions, just hints that are in the shadow. So it's more efficient painting and more effective. And then recently they just got into painting in their class, and so just great to see that the structure is still remaining and they're just now flying. So look to the light and you'll find beauty there. Okay, happy painting everyone.